Hey, yo, it's been a while since I've been back. There's a lot that's been going on, so let's talk about it. We had the holidays, so happy New Year to everybody who celebrate New Year on December 31st as opposed to the spring, which makes most sense to a lot of folks, including yours truly, but I still celebrate it for New Year's Eve. Because if we don't have time set aside to be off of work or be mostly together, then we're going to do that because that's what the social construct dictates at this time. Okay? But I don't get so wrapped up in the constant idea of what something's supposed to be in order to fit in. Nah, I just go along with the flow if it's something that is enjoyable to me. Now, if it stops being enjoyable to me, then I won't participate. It's not even more complicated than that. We have the election results, and we've talked about that a little bit briefly before I went on a little bit of sabbatical. I needed a break. I need breaks from this and creative endeavors. I want to take a break from this. Y'all are welcome to go to my Facebook and see the things I post. That ain't for everybody, I suppose. It could be, but it's up to you. But when I'm not doing videos, typically, um, just relaxing. And whenever my thoughts come to my head, I'll just post them. Like it or don't, I don't know. You're welcome to go and see it there. Because I'm still present, just present in a different space. Okay? Now, am I doing videos over there? Typically, now. Again, I have not adjusted to the concept and idea that we need to um, only educate through sound bites and flashiness. And yes, that sometimes is challenging because that's most of what's out there. I'm just gonna use my voice and talk, child. Y'all either understand it or you don't. Okay? Okay. Now, y'all see the hair is still hairing. I can't even put it all underneath here because, honey, it feels like snakes is on my head or bugs are up there just kind of touching me. So I don't want to be distracted. So I have to let a little bit of her out, you know. Anyway, we have that election, but the election was solidified recently, and as well as here in New Orleans, we had an incident on New Year's Eve, well, New Year's Day technically, because it was early in the morning, and then there's wildfires in California that are raging out of control, things of this nature. Here's what I think, and you ain't got to think the same thing, and I tell my students the same thing. You don't have to think what I think. You don't have to feel what I feel. I appreciate when you listen to what I got to say, and then you take what works for you and doesn't, and throw away the rest. Okay? I still believe, and I have believed for quite some time, we create this. We create the chaos and the madness. We create it by stagnation. We create it by our indifference. We create it by our anger and our ire. We create these energies. And that is incredibly frustrating sometimes to contend with because I still somehow believe in the goodness in the general populace. And one of the biggest reasons I believe that, nah, this ain't gonna be a popular thing to say, but I don't care. I just do what I do. Okay? Over the last 4 years or so, there's been a lot of bickering and fighting back and forth over whose guy or gal or in between is the best person to lead this country and participate in leading the free world. But the general human beings on the street, how we treat each other is more important. How that dynamic unfolds is more important. Truth be told, that was a big litmus test. Now I'm gonna sit here and say this. It's not what I'm about to say. Is not political. It's not. I am not good. I'm not good at politics. I was the one in the office that would tell the truth about what's going on in the office. Or I was the one in class that would say, okay, this is bull crap, and we all know it. Why are you teaching us this is bull crap? It only applies to a specific set of people, usually cis white males. I was that person in class, and I got on my teacher's nerves a lot of the time by doing so. So what I'm about to say has nothing to do with whether or not my politics want go one way or the other. Because the truth be told, I stopped participating in politics in the way that most citizens do now. A long time ago, I realized A lot of it is orchestrated bullcrap. Okay, but I do still think that an opinion must be said and must be had on such matters. I could be right or wrong about that, but we'll find out. I always use my experiences as a teaching mechanism, and hopefully that works for you. I had a good friend, and when I say had, I don't know our status at this time because we're not speaking, and it has not. It's very little to do with this politics or anything like that, but I understood her politics, right? I don't see people from that perspective. I don't see people. I see all of their layers. I see their race. I see their culture. I see all those things, and I appreciate them for what they are. And then based on how they treat me, I decide if they're going to be my friend. And then based on, as I get to know them, based on how they treat others, decide if I'm going to continue to be their friend. Like that, okay? And it's nothing to do with these labels and things that people think should separate us, because the truth be told, at the end of the day, a lot of people's politics are based on what their parents and the parents before them and the parents before them taught them, grained to put in them. Consciousness and our awareness and our sense of self, that is also built into our DNA. It's not just what we look like, how we think, even the way we laugh. It's built into our DNA. And then you have that coupled with nurture, the way you were raised. And some people have very little choice in how they perceive our world and interact with it. And being woke, side note, follow me on the street real quick. Being woke only indicates that you become aware of how much your DNA and socialized constructs of your parents and your caregivers created the identity that is you, and then one day you chose to create it to be something intentional. It's not much more complicated than that. And with that intention, you choose to see the world for as it is not for what it's told to be to you. Okay? Like somebody could say, going to school is a good thing. You're supposed to go to school, get good grades, go to college, get good grades, get a job, get good grades, get married, have children. That is built into your DNA from generations, and generations, and taught to you to be such a way. And then you're nurtured into believing doing those things and catching those goals. You're going to get claps and you'll get applause and you'll get congratulations for making those steps. And that's the only way to traverse life and be successful. Then one day, one of y'all might decide, what if there's something else? What if there's something different? What is a different concept of self? And we don't do that all at once. We do that in pieces, don't we, when we typically do it, right? And so, I don't judge people negatively on face value of what their politics are, what their culture is, what their identities are, any of those things, because I realize a lot of that is constructed within our DNA as well as our socializations. But the core of who you are, the part that can wake up to being more than what you were told to be, that shows itself in every interaction you have with individual human beings in your environment, including yours truly. With that, I'll say, I don't understand how anybody could think someone who actively engages in bigotry and racism, actively engages in harm to people around, and have actively engaged in harm to people around them, is somehow a good leader at this time. I don't understand it. We'll get deeper into that in a moment, but I don't understand it. Somebody would have to explain it to me like I'm 5. Anyway, back to this friend. So we've been friends since we were kids. And when I say kids, I mean 18, 19 years old. And it dawned on me one day when she was dealing with some difficulty and was dating, that all the guys she was dating or matched with on her dating apps, you can't find me on one because I can't do it. I don't know how y'all babies do it, but I can't do it. I can't. I cannot stand it. But she was brave enough to do it. So I was just, in the audience, kind of like living vicariously, right? Well, I was at home doing my own little thing by myself. Anyhow, they all had what is perceived to be right wing leaning politics, and they would express as such very, very fervently, and she would express that to me. I'm like, one maybe, two maybe, but all of them, or just about all of them, something ain't quite right about that. Because a lot of times on those apps, people tell you who they are. At least they show you a little snippet of who they are or who they pretend to be. But that's one of those things that people are very, very open and proud about. Eventually, there was a divide and a split with folks when it comes to such things. So I'm like, that can't be on accident. So I put a little pin in it. And then later on, there were some other problematic things. And then eventually, she got with her previous partner, long-term partner, and that person made it abundantly clear that their political leanings were right wing. Again, I'm not judging this person based on that because I understand the social constructs and how that work. But what I knew of that person and what I experienced of that person led me to understand that sometimes that can be a deal breaker. Sometimes that is a demonstration of character. It depends on how intelligent you think the person is and how aware and awake they are of who they truly are at their core. Okay? And I don't perceive her to be that way. Never did. Like, whereas that core kindness and giving spirit and nature that I knew of her. And it brought me to a space of understanding that when we're around people who welcome us when we're alone, that perceive the world in such a way, it is very hard to be at our core who we truly are. Sometimes that is the case. And that's what I experienced. And it became very, very difficult to remain friends. Her with me and me with her. And I don't hate her. I love her to pieces still to this day. But it's very challenging sometimes to have friends that believe that this person is good because they perceive the country being run as a business as a good thing because it benefits them. It doesn't benefit everyone. And that goes right over those people's heads sometimes. Like, hey, that's only going to benefit specific subsets of people and you're okay with that. That's no different. That is no different than separating kids in school back in the day. That is no different than having redlining and different socioeconomic statuses based on cultural identity and race, which is also a social construct. Because, listen, understand we are looking at phenotypes of each other and we're realizing there are differences. And there are differences, culturally and otherwise. It's the reason why when you go to the doctor, they ask you about your bloodline and what kind of health complications they had. Because they know that that's uniquely you, and that's going to be passed down and passed down and passed down unless you change something. Excuse me. Y'all know I don't stop no video for a burp because my kids those. But at a certain point, when do we get to a space where like I can love this person, but also I'm not okay with that, identifying with that? And that's challenging because I still love everybody who voted for that man. I still do. And here's the key about it. Over the last 4 years, I tried my best to be a part of my community, and I've done that job on more of a low-key level. Before it's like social media, and we've talked about it before, spiritual communities, black women online, creators and supporting each other. I'm not a part of that, and I to this day don't freaking know why, but at a certain point I chose not to be. Initially I was like confused, but now I'm just like, I don't need, God is not the author of confusion. And God is not the author of confusion. I refuse to participate in the confusion and the back and forth and the clapping and all this stuff and the arguing. I will not be participating in that, darlings. So if someone want to have a supportive sense of community without competition, I'm all for that. But until then, I'm cool with being by myself. All right. Even though sometimes it saddens me because I want to support, I want to be a part of the community, but not so much that I change who I am or I'm influenced by my environment in a way that changes me at the core. Absolutely not. And that's what I think the biggest part that gets me about the people who voted that way. Because either they voted that way or they didn't vote at all. Those who benefit from thought processes like the one our current president possess. I don't know that man. He ain't. It is what it is. But I know what he said. I know the policies that he's governed. Now, the only thing that he did when he was in office that I thought was beneficial to the collective in this country was ensure that we got fed during COVID, which I think is an easier thing to do. Like, either this country is piss poor and we shouldn't be sending billions of dollars over to Ukraine, or we got money. Literally nobody should have gotten cut off from them checks anytime soon. We should have got a check once and then call it good. A lot of countries subsidize their communities when there's crisis. Not just send funds to the governor to decide to give it out as they will. We should do that too, to make sure that the infrastructure is sound. But each person is paid something to live upon. We're the only country that doesn't really do that. And that was the first time it ever really happened. And I appreciate that. So we're gonna give credit where credit is due. The unfortunate part is when I hear someone who constantly insults people and is constantly causing emotional damage to people and is constantly perceiving things differently than I do, I try to understand it first before I critique. And from what I understand, whether you believe it or not, if you hear my voice, that man was originally a Democrat, but he didn't pull himself up by his bootstraps. He got money. Inherited. I ain't the first person to say it or know it. This is a fact. But at a certain point, realized where his bread and butter can come from. And that is people who live with a little bit of animosity, a little bit of bigotry in their heart for people who look different than they do and are culturally different. I'm not saying everybody who voted for the man is that. And this is not me placating up people pleasing. I know they aren't. I've met them. Not understandable to me. They made the business choice. To them, it was a business choice. Like, well, if money is that important to you, then I see you did a little bit different, just so you know that. I hide nothing about how I feel about people if they ask me if we're in conversation. I'm not going to treat you any different, but I'm going to think of you differently. And if you don't care about that, that's fine. But I don't trust you the same. If business decisions supersede your moral imperative. But that's a me choice. Okay? But some majority are that way. And when I say majority, I mean sample sizes were taken by myself, truly. It's like, when I say sample size were taken, you take statistics and you look at each state who voted that way, right? And then you look at the levels of disparity socioeconomically within the cultural background of that state in those areas that voted most widely for Trump, and you realize there's a big disparity and a wealth gap, a bigger disparity and wealth gap between those who are perceived to be minorities and people who are Caucasian or white or Anglo, depends upon what label you want to put it on, and then you realize there's a common factor there. Okay? Places that have better access to mental health care, better access to health care in general, places that don't govern women's bodies in the same way that some of these other places do, places that have more support and community, they were less likely in those areas to vote for him. So that's enough for me to understand something's not quite right about that. Now, you might think it to yourself, and I don't know if you are, you might be. Maybe we're supposed to be dynamically independent and not need community and stand on our own 2 feet. Well, good for you if you were able to do that. And chances are there's a subset that are exactly as I just described who voted for him. Like, I don't need help from the government. I don't need help from anybody. I figured out my way. I did all of the steps in life, and it actually worked out well for me. That are prescribed to have a good life. Cool. Great for you. But understand there are people who also did those steps and still struggle and are still struggling. So I would say you don't have to care about those people. You can just care about yourself, and there ain't nothing inherently wrong or evil about that. Leave it to the rest of us who are bleeding their hearts. God, you don't have to do anything. But I will tell you this. Your house burns down tomorrow off a bed. It's your community that will have your back first and foremost. If you have a sense of it. We're not islands. We're not meant to stand alone. We're meant to love and care for each other. And that is both objective and subjective, depending upon your viewpoint. Eventually, we're going to all get to a space where we get old and vulnerable. Yeah, there are places that'll take care of the elderly, but if you don't have any family, having a sense of community is what helps. There are times when we all get sick. There are times where we just need somebody. Our sense of community is what gets us through. It is beneficial to us to have that. One of the reasons why I tried so hard in so many different ways to be a part of different spiritual communities online is because of the sense of community that I had been wanting since I was a very young person. Seeing them for the first time online was one of the biggest treasures, but also one of the biggest disappointments to me. And maybe I've not experienced enough of them, or whatever the case may be, to make a full judgment. But what I've experienced so far has not been great. It's not been genuine. It's not been kind. So, in that vein, I'm a sit still until my community in that way presents itself. I have a sense of community now that has nothing to do with my spiritual path. They know I'm a spiritual being. They know that I don't have specific beliefs and constructs that govern me, other than the things that I say on here. But that's it. They just get to know me as a person. And that's something I've not allowed for a long time too. Not fully. Unless someone got really close to me. Anyway. I think that we have a responsibility and a duty at a certain point to decide whether or not money is more important than love of self and community. Because as soon as you think it's not going to impact you eventually, it shall impact you eventually. Just as every single person who is marginalized and enslaved right now, and yes, I said enslaved, we still have slavery in this country. I've made no bones about that. We still have slavery in this country. Because people who are working for lower wages don't want to work for lower wages. We call it unskilled labor. That's a myth. Because a lot of things that they're doing in those different jobs, the average person in a blue collar or a white collar can't do it. Okay? Or wouldn't want to do it. These are the things that either you don't want to do or you are unskilled at doing. Because I don't know about y'all. I worked in fast food when I was younger. Several times, as a matter of fact, was making my way. And we had to remember so many damn menu items. We had to categorize things while also remaining calm while there's people who are sometimes irate and disrespectful. We have to somehow get that service done well, done warm, done properly, correct any mistakes along the way, and then figure out a way to do that around in tight spaces around a whole bunch of coworkers who also are very, very young. That teaches you a lot of interpersonal skills as well. But for some reason, those wages are very not even livable because you're supposed to. Well, the expectation in your mind is that you're living at home with family or parents. But let me tell you something. Not even 2 weeks ago, I encountered a young man, and you would think this is on every street corner in impoverished areas. This was in an impoverished area. Okay, there were some scatters of people who had lower socioeconomic status, but it wasn't like that was everywhere. This is a suburb, kind of low to upper middle class in between. It had a mixture in this area. And it was just the one solo 15-year-old boy I encountered coming out of the Walgreens. And he asked me if he can clean my windows or wash my car in the parking lot for some money. Now, this is not a person, I know what you're thinking probably. This is a person that's drugged out or, an alcoholic or something like that. No, this is an average, normal teenage boy. I made an assessment based on my medical knowledge as well as my mental health knowledge. And he was just a regular person. And I asked him, I stopped to have a conversation with him. I asked him, so, why are you out here? What are you doing? Well, I'm trying to get a job. And I'm 15 years old. I live with my grandmother and my little sister. And nobody will hire me. I tried the Burger King down, and he was listing all the different addresses and locations of fast food restaurants in which he was trying to get a job, and nobody wants to hire a 15-year-old. And back in the day, they would hire a 15-year-old. I started working at 14. This is after I had my first business. Okay. But I started working at Wendy's at 14. As long as you get that document signed at school, saying that you are authorized to work, and as long as you maintain your grades, you was able to work as young as 15 years old. And that wasn't that long ago. So for this young man to say to me, I can't get a job because nobody wants to hire me. They would rather me be 18. And that's true. That's true. Because he ain't the only one that I've spoken to that is in the young person age range that has told me that even the fast food restaurants and the gas stations and stuff are preferring 18-year-olds. Because sometimes a lot of these places, not the fast food restaurants in particular, but the gas stations and stuff, they're selling cigarettes and alcohol, and they want you to be able to be old enough to be able to sell all the merchandise, not just the merchandise that is stuff that you can sell at your age. They don't want to lose money because you're on the clock. So given that, that's one of the many reasons why these jobs shouldn't be low wage. I said a whole bunch of things just now about why it is beneficial for us to not have low wages and what is considered unskilled or labor, which again, that is a myth. Because during COVID, those are the people who are our heroes. Outside of the doctors and nurses and medical teams, the people who kept the gas stations and the eateries open and the grocery stores open are the people who kept us alive. We should be thanking them still. And for some reason we aren't. For some reason we went right back to several things. Come here. Okay? So I am a lot of things. One thing I am not anymore is patient with this bull crap. We saw, and I'm going to reiterate, we saw the lakes and the oceans and the animals get healthier when we went sat down somewhere. We saw the lifting of communities during Black Lives Matter. And I'm going to say it again before it got corrupted by ego and money hungriness. We saw the world come together for a common cause. because we gave a damn. We saw these people who we called unskilled laborers go to work and make sure we had everything we need while some of y'all was going in the grocery store with snuffles on your face and they was still in there serving us. We saw, we experienced. And one of the first things we start doing, when I say we, I'm not including myself, because to hell with that, because I'm not including myself in it. One of the first things we saw when things started, the lights started clicking back on Earth when it comes to people going back outside again, is pollution ramping back up. Infighting ramping back up. Money hungriness ramping back up. People fighting over whether or not these people deserve a livable wage. Because somehow they think it's going to impact their little bit of wages that they make it themselves. Political fighting back and forth, when once during that time we saw people singing from their balconies to comfort each other. People were longing to be amongst friends and family because they didn't know what was going to happen the next day. And they appreciated the sense of community that they once had. And now we have people fighting each other over the silliest little things. It's like nothing at all was learned. You know what brought this home to me? I don't care what y'all say about it. I'm just going to say what I got to say about it, and y'all feel the way you feel. Taylor Swift fans, come here. See, Taylor Swift came to New Orleans recently. Nobody here that is a local that's been here for a while enjoyed that very much. Now, there's some people who did. But again, I see these people as people who go along with that construct and haven't fully awakened to that inner core of who they are. And that's just my subjective opinion. Take it or leave it. But one of the things that happened, a lot of things that occurred. This person is bringing in jets. This person is flying in supplies. This person is creating a spectacle, which is fine. We need entertainment to get by in life, whatever. But something that I guess I can only judge it if I was in it, but since I'm not in it, I'm gonna judge as best as I can from this position sitting right here. A lot of the homeless population was swept off the streets. Here we have different little clusters of tent communities of people who are unhoused, who either knew or been out there a while, just decided, you know what, it's easier doing this than trying to pay a rent that goes up arbitrarily every year, or utilities that grow up arbitrarily whenever they feel like it's. Side street, my son told me during the Christmas holidays, when the power goes out, they make them pay a $50 fee to reconnect the power, like as if their power went out. Like I'm talking for a storm or something like that. They make them pay each a $50 reconnection fee. That's not something the electric company does. That's just the apartment complex they're living in that's making them do that, because nobody else do that. It is illegal. Most people don't feel like they can fight, because if they do try to fight it and they get it overturned, then the landlord makes life difficult for them. So they just eat whatever crap they have to deal with. So a lot of times when people are in those tent cities and communities, they're making a choice to do that because they're tired of the bull crap. But some people are unhoused because life kicked them right in the teeth, or they have addictions or mental health. The issues range, but those are still human beings that got swept off the street for Taylor Swift's concert. They have all their important documents in those tents. They have everything they own in those tents, and they got swept away like garbage. Literally, judges had to make injunctions in order to get that overturned and stop the cops from sweeping these people on the street, so our city can look nice for Taylor Swift. You are a billionaire. If you are a billionaire, this is just my subjective opinion, but also objective if you really look at the way life is right now. You're a billionaire. You ain't get there because you were completely and utterly honest or gave a damn. about the average human being you're impacting in a negative way. Now you get these news stories about the young lady giving wealth to her employees. Great. But if it were me, and it's just me, and yes, I'm judging, so please forgive me. I don't know what no other way to feel about it right now. If it were me, I would sit there and maybe think about the impact that I'm making on every city that I land in, including the people who are the most vulnerable. Because by proxy of her presence, those people lost what little homes they had, a lot of them, and had to rebuild from nothing. And some of them are still laying out there in the cold right now without their shelter because Taylor Swift had to perform and we had to make the city look pretty. Stuff like that is a business decision. Businesses don't seem to care about humanity around it, and in doing so, we become livestock or less than livestock. And that was never meant to be a thing, I don't think. Not that we treat our livestock all that well. We don't. But one thing I can say, you'd be hard pressed to find a cow that doesn't have a home. I'm going to say it twice. You'd be hard pressed to find a cow or a pig or a chicken that don't have a home. Somebody's feeding it. Somebody's taking care of it. Well, you might say, well, that's because eventually they're going to get slaughtered and eaten. Tell me, what's the difference? If the average human being out there will work themselves to high blood pressure, heart conditions, immunocompromised diseases, because of the stress of the labor intensive work they are doing, plus the low wages coupled with that, with terrible health care coverage that they have to pay for, and pharmaceuticals that sometimes make them sicker before they make them better, if not kill them. What's the difference? Human beings are treated less than animal husbandry in this country if they don't meet a certain peak. And that's if they're lucky enough to get into certain doors and meet certain people, because sometimes it's not always about your skill and your education. Sometimes it's about who you know in it. And since that is the case, shouldn't we care? Well, again, we can go back to the earlier conversation we had about the upper middle class, especially if they're cis and white. They don't have to concern themselves with that at this moment. But let me tell you something. A lot of them that I've experienced or that I'm aware of in some way also ought be aware that this country is no longer majority Caucasian. And I think that's part of the reason why they voted the way they voted. We can kick people out and we can keep the rest out. Okay, I can see maybe being territorial because you got what you got, you don't want to lose it. That's also a succinct fear. And it's very challenging to figure out which ways to do what about what. But what I can say is, giving a damn about the average human being around you is not a bad thing and never will be. Okay? And not just the people who look just like you. Okay? Again, I know it's probably sound like I'm all over the place, but I have a point. I have several of them, obviously. And for me, you don't have to believe it, and that's fine. But for the past 4 years, I busted my ass fighting for, vocalizing, and supporting communities that don't support me back. The people who have supported me the most are people who voted for Trump. I'm going to let you hear that twice. The people who have supported me emotionally and lovingly the most. Even with saying all of that are people who voted for Trump. And I'm aware that they voted for Trump. And I dissent. And they know I dissent. And yet they still treated me well. What's going on there? Because they know I rep for my people. They know I don't like none of what that man is standing for right now. They know I also do not enjoy nor like that they voted that way. But I can't control nobody else's voting habits, you understand? I can only dissent and tell them how I feel about it. I don't get upset at the dinner table or nothing like that, because it's not that serious to me, child. There's an underlying thing there that people are missing. Yeah, there's something that's being not perceived, but a collective. See, what a lot of people don't realize is that there are some people still following a certain social construct underneath the surface, even though overtly it appears that they're bigots and hateful. Now, some of their ideas and constructs of bigotry have bigotry and hatred within them. But again, that's the script they're going by. The part of them that is awake and aware of some inner core of their soul that is not socially constructed is genuinely kind. Do I say all of them? No. The ones that I've encountered. You think it does me any favors to tell you that the majority of people who have supported me just in my everyday walk of life are people who voted for him? No, it brings me no joy to say that. But there's something going on there. Some people who were the kindest to me over the last 4 years. Let me tell you something. I know I told y'all about this spot I go to relax. And nobody really know nothing about this aspect of me. They just treat me like me. They don't know nothing about my past. I just can be Sidonia in there. I listen to live music, which is always beautiful. It's not crowded. I always have a seat because if I got to stand up to go enjoy whatever it is we go and enjoy, unless it's a festival and I've geared myself up for that once a year, maybe twice, I'm not going. Okay, I'm not going. But there's a person in there. He's one of the owners, and he is very vocal about having voted for that man multiple times. So, but when I tell you, at the end of the night, I get up to go home, and I'm usually by myself. I would say 9 times out of 10, and most of the time, 10 times out of 10, I'm just going, hang out with the people I know. That bar is kind of like Cheers. Everybody knows your name. The regulars are the regulars, right? And then nobody in the night, I'm just sitting there sipping on water. Doesn't matter to this person. I try to leave. He said, come here. He's never tried to flirt with me. He's never been inappropriate with me. Nothing like that. And he'll get up, even though he has ailing knees. He'll get up and he'll hobble and he'll watch me walk to my car or walk me to my car if it's close enough. And he makes sure I get in there safe every night. I ain't never asked this man to do this. And I'm one of the maybe 2 regulars that are not Caucasian that will go into this place. Now we have certain nights where we'll get packed with it just by everybody's culture, which is beautiful, right? Everybody's welcome. And into that is a microcosm of what I've experienced over the last 4 years. And they all know how I feel. I don't make it no secret. But we're not ugly to each other. We never have been about it. We get to a point where we just stop talking about it. We feel the way we feel, we feel the way we feel. But our souls are different. Our souls don't have labels. It doesn't have political parties. It don't have race. It's like our blood. So something going on there. The kindness factor is still very much there because I've encountered in this one particular space several people like this. And not just there. I have a friend whose entire family, fairly, fairly certain, if they haven't told me, I can just guess by proximity, voted for Trump. You know, my own family, they wasn't even speaking to me or talking to me really, or support me in any way really. I don't. It didn't. I was okay with it. I got a place of peace with it. But you know, one of them were born in January. A couple of them were born in January, and I'm born in February. And every year, I would show up. There are times where I would show up, and they would have a birthday cake for me on their birthday to make sure, because they knew what my situation was, to make sure I felt included. They'd have little crafty t-shirts. They'd make little crafty t-shirts with my name on it so everybody can know that it was also my birthday too. They were sharing it with me. They didn't have to do that. Not at all. And no, it wasn't on some, and I know there's a dynamic that happens sometimes where people who may have ill intent underneath the surface might want to show off to their friends and family they have a black friend. It's never been like that. I know the difference. Honey, I've experienced both. It's never been like that. Never. Because before we even got to that level of dynamic in friendship, it was a private friendship and a very supportive one. Because I always felt that way. I always had underneath the surface. It's not bigotry or hatred that stemmed this feeling. But I was raised in such a dynamic in which we don't trust anybody white. Not 100%. They always got ulterior motives or some other such nonsense. But in these cases, I can tell you there was none. I benefit them in no way. They had other people. If they were going to use me as their token friend, there were other people available for that in their dynamic. And so the confusion hit me at a certain point. Like, how could you possibly still think that this person's a good person or a good leader? They're barely coherent most days, at least in my assessment. And then I got to a space I said, you know what? What matters most is what these people do in their communities and what these people do with each other and how they treat me. So I'm going to go with that. And still feel the way I feel about that man. Again, I don't have any hate in my heart. I just have complete and utter confusion as to why and how somebody can behave that way and think that way and be okay with themselves at night, while also doing a benefit to society and exposing people who are actual, to lack of better phrasing, shitty human beings who do believe that they're better than other people based on their skin tone, who do believe that they're supposed to inherit the earth, who do believe that people who look differently than they do deserve less than they do. He feeds the flames of that. Who do believe that women are our lessers and just our baby makers and here to keep us comfort without anything returned. There are people like that voted for that man. You don't think I know that? I absolutely know that. But I think it's more nuanced than we perceive it to be. And I think that's one of the biggest, what I just described, that dynamic I just described, I think it's one of the reasons why he won. It's because we went on, when I say we, I'm talking about the collective we, because I ain't participating in that nonsense. We went online and just was ugly, hateful, and mean to each other based on politics, instead of saying, you know what, I understand that was the way you was raised. I understand that that's a part of your DNA. I understand all those things. Here I am as a person, and I'm going to support you. I'm support you as a part of my community, regardless of that. We're going to do the best we can to support each other, while also voicing our truth about how we feel. and doing so in such a way that we still respect your unique humanness. But no, we're to be mean and hurtful and awful to each other because we had to fight fire with fire. And in this case, the fire that was already burning inside of the hateful was already burning stronger. The only thing that can put that out is water, metaphorically speaking. Water comes from emotion. Water is healing. Water is love. Do you understand? You hold that water and you say, as hard as it is right now, not to cuss you out and not to stomp on your face, metaphorically speaking, I am going to do that because you don't know no better. You haven't awakened to the soul that's supposed to be kind to each other, regardless of how our opinions differ. We have to try to find a space to be kind. What if they're being unkind to me over and over again? Well, guess what? You don't have to participate with that person, while still speaking your truth and not having to be as ugly as they are. Someone somewhere, and someone's somewhere, and this is some of the folks that I do not participate with and wish we had a sense of community, but we do not currently. And I hope someday that changes. Told y'all to be as ugly as they are, and that's what's going to win. They were wrong then, and they are wrong now. That is all.